Okay, today we're going to be sharing a few thoughts on the Nike Pegasus Premium, which has been a very divisive shoe online. There's a few different categories of people. There's people who hate the fact that this shoe exists. There's a few people who have actually tried it and don't like it. But then there is a fair few people who like the concept. They've got themselves a pair. They don't mind it underfoot. And there's a few people who love it as well. So I'm going to chuck my thoughts in over the top and try to give you a few clues on whether this shoe is worth looking into or whether it is all hype, all marketing, and it's just not a real running shoe. So yeah, we'll run through it from top to bottom as always, chat a bit about the price point, the marketing, and then compare it to a few other models on the market, see where this shoe sits. So this is Nike's premium model of the Pegasus line. It's the first shoe which is kind of showing their new three-tier, 3-row system with the structure, the Pegasus and the Vimero, standard version, plus, and then premium. It's the first new model, I guess, as part of that, sitting on top of the Pegasus line, which is labeled as responsive. So we've got a big mashup of technologies, 45 mil of foam in the heel, standard Nike 10 mil drop, and that is going to be made up of a ZoomX layer on top, and huge air unit which wraps, or continues all the way through the midsole, curved like a carbon plate, which is allegedly meant to kind of guide you through, give you that bit of a scooping action, and then the React X layer in the heel, which I think is mainly for protection. We'd also have a very thick rubber outsole in the forefoot. They're not risking any kind of pops from sticks or stones into the air unit. Probably about 7 or 8 mil there, so I guess that could also be included in the stack height. All of that together is weighing in at 349 grams in my men's size 10.5, which makes it the heaviest shoe that I have almost ever worn. I think the only shoe that's come close has been the Glycerin Max, which is around 345 maybe. Very, very heavy shoe. It's definitely not a kind of light, nimble, snappy trainer. Starting off with the upper on this shoe, it is very, very comfortable and it definitely does live up to its premium name. This tongue is glorious across the top of the foot. It isn't gusseted, but it is very, very wide, kind of wrapping all the way over on your foot. And then you do have this kind of strap on top, which means that the laces kind of hold it in place quite nicely. The padding goes all the way down the eyelet chain as well, so you are protected completely from the laces. A lot of padding around the heel counter, a little bit of an elf swoop there, which is nice for the Achilles. It is an absolutely fantastic step in. I was not expecting to feel as good in this shoe when I first put it on, but it really did impress. And although it might not be the most stripped down or kind of, you know, practical, it is very, very comfortable. The rest of the upper material is this combination of kind of thicker knitted mesh and this kind of, I guess, stripped, almost like waterproof material. There's a lot of double overlays which do make it a little bit of a hot shoe to run in, especially during the summer. And although, yeah, it is very comfortable, I probably wouldn't mind seeing a bit more weight saving to actually bring it back into the realm of competitive, lightweight, responsive trainers. I think there's a lot of weight which is soaked into the upper. Although it is comfortable, it's probably not the most practical. In terms of sizing and fit, I went for my standard Nike size, men's size 10.5. I float between 10, 10.5. Nike, it's always the half size up. And I found that it fit decently well. Lengthwise, we're on point, but I did find that it is a little bit more of kind of scooped fit on the outside edges. So my big toe had a little bit of pressure, ended up feeling a little bit short, just with a little bit of kind of touching on the outside edge of the upper. But other than that, I would say true to size for most people. Doesn't have a heap of volume through the fit. I would say standard feet are going to get away with it. Wide footers, it's probably not something to be jumping onto. Moving down to the midsole, this is a big monstrosity of technologies. And look, it is a very, very heavy shoe, and you do notice that when you take your first couple of steps. But the combination of technologies here does give you this kind of deep, rubbery kind of, I don't know, balloony kind of bounce. It's not like many other foam running shoes that I've tried in the past. It doesn't compress and rebound in the same way. You do get this kind of sink in, and you can kind of feel the air kind of redistributing around the pod, and you can feel it giving you a kind of intentional bounce back, which is definitely not the most responsive thing that I've ever felt. Like, people talk about this as if it's, you know, an absolute spring underfoot. It is bouncy for sure, but when you have that much weight and you have to put so much force into it to get that sensation, the kind of payoff isn't quite as good as people are making out, I don't think. So shoes like the Neo Vista, I guess I've got the second version, but the old one, that was bouncier. I felt like the Super Blast is bouncier in terms of the kind of pop that you get out of it. Prime X is bouncier, but this is a different kind of bounce. And so for that, I can kind of appreciate the novelty. It's not really relying on rockers or the kind of, you know, smooth guiding ride that a lot of shoes have nowadays. It is definitely focusing it all into the foam, letting the foam and the AirPod do the work. And I do think that if you put a bit of effort into it and kind of compress it down, put a bit of force through the forefoot or the heel, whichever you choose, I do think it does reward you to a point. So for me, I kind of found that on my easy runs, I would run faster in this shoe to make it feel good. So most of the time my easy runs are 450 to 5 minute pace, and I kind of just tick along. But in this shoe, I would run 420 to 430 pretty consistently because it just felt better. It felt like the shoe was working well with my gait, and I actually did have a pretty good time on those specific runs. But the problem I find with this shoe is that there's just not many days in the week where I'm willing to chuck this shoe on. It doesn't feel good when I'm sore after a session. This is not a recovery run shoe for me. Having to put an extra bit of pace in to compress the midsole and get it to transition through is just not something I can do when my legs are sore. And it's also not something that I take beyond 40 minutes of running. I'm not spending a long run in this shoe with this much weight underfoot. It does feel fun and novel for a quick jog, half an hour, 40 minutes with a mate, ideally. But other than that, I do think it is still quite a hassle. I do think that this does qualify for running shoes status. It's definitely not the best out there. I don't think it's really competitive with the other super trainers on the market. And I also don't think that this is the best setup that Nike could have brought to us to sit on top of the responsive line in the Pegasus. Like, considering the fact that the Pegasus, the normal one, is quite a kind of firm, snappy ride, and then the Pegasus Plus is lightweight, nimble, flexible. I feel like they should have been kind of sticking to that snappier, up-tempo daily trainer vibe and brought us something which actually can move. This is a big lumbering giant and could have existed pretty happily outside this new 3-tier, 3-row system as a kind of hybrid between a style shoe and a running shoe. I think it would have sold just as well, and I think the public perception would be a bit nicer amongst the running community. As a bit of a side tangent, I think the Pegasus Premium should have been a small revival of the Nike Tempo Next Percent. Obviously not in its original form, because that thing broke and snapped and popped in every single way possible. The rubber would shatter underfoot, but why not give us a big forefoot of Zoom X foam which tapers off into the heel, layer that with some SRO2 foam underfoot, give us an airbag or an air unit which is encapsulated in the forefoot, and then give us a flexible nylon plate. Give us that kind of snappy, fun, flexible, adaptable trainer with a bit of pop. You can still use all of your different technologies. I think that would have been a much better way to go about it and actually bring an audience back into the Nike line. This is not going to do it for them. I think it is decent enough as a concept, but I just don't think it's really filling the spot which it should. So yeah, for me, I think that this shoe is decent enough on some runs when I'm in the right mood, when I've got a 40-minute run on the cards and I'm not feeling sore, which is once every 2 weeks or so. And so yeah, I can recommend it for that, but I think 300 bucks is a lot of money to be paying for a one-use shoe, which isn't even as good as other shoes in the same category. Moving down to the outsole, the thick rubber here is doing its job. It has to be there to protect the air unit. The grip has been fine. I am seeing a little bit of wear on the outside edge there. I wonder how quickly that will continue if I was to spend a lot more time in it. Yeah, nothing to really report here. The grip is decent lug pattern too. Hasn't been raining. Not a super useful analysis, I know, but yeah, it's not as loud and slappy as I was expecting. Oftentimes these kind of thick Nike rubbers can be really kind of clappy, a bit like the Alpha Fly, but this seems to be a slightly softer compound, which hasn't been too bad. Coming around to the price point, $300 here in Australia, I think is overpriced for the overall performance and versatility of the shoe. But you could make an argument that with the amount of technology included in this shoe, the Zoom X, the long AirPod, which I'm sure took a bit of engineering to put together, you could argue that there is a bit of value to be had there, maybe. But yeah, in terms of performance, there's other shoes in this same super shoe, kind of tall trainer category, which do a much better job, outperform it in weight, in versatility, in feel and comfort and bounce and everything else. But to be fair, they probably don't look as good as the Pegasus Premium. So I guess there is that kind of customer who wants a shoe for a casual run down to the coffee shop by the coast, wear this for that, head into the gym as well. It's a good looking shoe. And so again, as I mentioned before, I think if Nike released this outside their serious running lineup as a kind of hybrid runner for someone who just wants something which looks good and can handle a bit of running and feel decent enough while doing it. I think that a lot of people would be pretty happy to get behind that. Nike can do what they like with the kind of running setup that they have, but when you're kind of encroaching on real serious performance and just leaving, you know, really good models sitting in the lab, it is a bit annoying. I'm sure they could have made something better for that slot above the Pegasus Plus, and it's just a bit annoying that this is what they brought out. I think I've kind of got to the point where I'm seeing this shoe as more of a kind of concept model, something along the lines of Puma Fast RB or Adidas Prime X, but the difference here is that they've kind of made it clear, those other brands, that this is our kind of rule breaker shoe, something we just throw everything at the wall, see what sticks. This, the fact that they've put it on top of the Pegasus line and called it a serious running shoe, I think that's what's getting a lot of hate. Look at it like this. You shouldn't be paying $300 for this as a serious running shoe, something to compete with the Super Blast or the Neo Vista or the Puma Mag Max or anything else like that. You just shouldn't buy it. But if you are someone who needs a shoe to go for a run with mates, go grab some coffee, go to the gym, and you like the look of this shoe, like you would rather buy one pair of good looking running shoes than a running shoe and then a pair of Air Maxes, I think there is a market for that, and I think Nike are entitled to take advantage of that, and it does seem to be working reasonably well. I've seen this picked up by sneaker review channels, not running shoes, but the people who like the look of it, and I think that's fair enough. Like, there is a market there, and they're within their rights to take advantage of it, but yeah, I can definitely understand why the running community has pushed back against it. So not worth the price, but in some situations, maybe. Getting to a few comparisons, it is a little bit tricky because I don't think that I really have anything which is exactly the same as this. I kind of consider this to be a max cushion easy day shoe for myself personally. So shoes which I think are relevant are the Glycerin Max, which I have passed on in terms of just being a kind of easy plotter. You put a bit more force into it, compress the foam, feels decent. The Glycerin Max is much more stable, much more rocketed, relies more on kind of tipping you through your stride, where the flat forefoot here does encourage you to kind of punch into the AirPod and the Zoom X and actually get the foam moving. I still probably prefer the Pegasus Premium over the Glycerin Max. That was just a big shoe, although it was quite comfortable. I just feel like this is maybe a little bit more, I don't know, responsive, has a bit more personality, whereas the Glycerin Max was just a big lump of foam which has been done to death. Plus it costs $350, which is ridiculous. So yeah, if you have $350 in your bank account, take yourself to dinner and grab a pair of the Pegasus Premium. I think the Glycerin Max is still very overpriced. The other one is the Puma Mag Max, which I would probably choose over the Pegasus Premium for $270 versus $300. It's got a decent foam, allegedly a nitro PEBA top layer with some nitrogen infused EVA underneath, more stable, more kind of bouncy, easier to run in. It's lighter too, despite how big that shoe is. And yeah, just overall, I think it is a legitimate running shoe which can handle some variety of paces. It's good for easy days, daily training, warm up and cool down. You could argue it'd be okay for some long, slow, easy runs if that's your preference. I'm not a huge max cushion shoe person, so yeah, I think I would actually still choose the Mag Max over the Pegasus Premium, but I'm still using them for similar runs in my week. Those kind of, yeah, easy runs, 40 minutes, where I'm just kind of ticking the legs over. Final one I would compare it to would be the original Prime X, which has been released for a lot of years now. This is a much better shoe than the Pegasus Premium. This weighs like 60 grams less, it's bouncier, it's more responsive, not as stable for sure, but I think this is a better implementation of, you know, top-end technology into a training package. It was much more expensive, but I guess you could argue it's on discount around the place. Yeah, I much prefer the feel of the Prime X to the Pegasus Premium. I just think that Nike could have done a much better job with the technologies at their disposal. You know, like, they've reigned supreme in the racing arena for years with Zoom X and Air Zoom pods. It's kind of bizarre that when they come to training shoes and, you know, daily trainers, they kind of just crap the bed. So yeah, bit of a disappointment really. Those are the three shoes that I'll probably compare it to. So yeah, overall the Nike Pegasus Premium has been a bit of a confusing model for me. I have enjoyed a few runs that I've done in it, those 40-minute jogs, and I'm in the right mood. My legs are fresh, I'm ready to push the pace a bit. I have actually had a pretty good time in it. That said, pulling it out once every 2 weeks and having a decent time for that one specific run is not enough to get it across the line, especially when it costs this much, and especially with all the marketing around it, which suggests that it is this awesome responsive model. I think this is a good looking style shoe which has some running capability. I think this should have been made outside of the Nike running lineup and the reception would have been much better, but this is just not the best that Nike could have done atop the Pegasus line. I really am a little bit worried about what they've got to come with the Vomero Plus, the Vomero Premium. I'm worried that things are going to get heavy and clunky, and they're just not really going to respect what people want out of a top-end super trainer. Not something I'm going to be running in for much longer. I do think there is a place for it though, probably not for most of you runners.